In 2020, more than 50,000 families, friends, and neighbors provided support to people living with dementia. This number is expected to increase to nearly 150,000 by the year 2050. So, how does your party plan to provide better respite options for caregivers across the province? You're on mute, Minister.
First person to make that mistake. Thank you. Thanks very much, Jim, and thank you to Jennifer and Jim for your introductions. I'm here in my campaign office, my less than well-lighted campaign office here in Vancouver, Renfrew, on the territory of the Musqueam and the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh. You're quite right when you look at the numbers of people involved. Alzheimer Society estimates it's 85,000 people in BC with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Just to put that in context, well, long-term care is really important. We're going to talk about that. Really, only 21 or 22,000 of those people living with dementia are living in long-term care. So that means the support of the health system, first of all, for families is critically important. It's why working with the seniors advocate, Isabel McKenzie, we're expanding and will continue to expand adult day programs in BC that were really affected profoundly, of course, by the COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, record hours, 25% more compared to what was there before for community-based services, nurses and others who support people living in communities. And of course, significant increases in home support, which is the feature, one of the feature items of our agreements, our funding agreements with the federal government. As well, I think it's critical to support diverse communities because the community of people living with dementia is as diverse as the entire population of BC. So we'll be having an opportunity, I think, to talk about specific plans for cultural communities and supporting their actions. For example, recent increases in adult day programs in the South Asian community through PICS or in the Korean community through the New Vista Society are really important things that we can talk about. But I think it's focusing on and increasing the number of people receiving respite services, adult day programs, and home support, which we've been doing, and expanding out the people who can offer those services through programs such as HCAP is really some of the important things we can do.
Thank you for that response, Minister. And I'd love to, sorry, Jim, I know I'm jumping in a little bit, but I'd love to hear responses also from Camille and then Corinne as well to the same question. So perhaps Camille will go with you next.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the question, Jennifer. We believe it is absolutely essential that we have to learn from firsthand accounts. As Minister just indicated, there are hundreds of thousands of people right now that are providing care to those affected by Alzheimer's and dementia. And so when we're developing plans, we need to make sure that we are listening to the lived experiences because they can help inform our path forward. I agree that respite care and day programs are absolutely both necessary. They're pretty much the only thing often that can give caregivers a break. And we need to keep improving on those funding models because they may not be meeting the needs of the people right now. We also want to closely examine the in-home care available to people. Often we tend to focus just on the health tasks, but we think it's also very important that we're focusing on the daily activities that are needed to be able to live well. And the reason for that is that this approach is not only the right thing to do, but it also makes financial sense, which I know really matters to people in British Columbia right now. And what some of the listeners may not be aware of is that it costs us $27,000 per year more just to have someone in a long-term care bed versus providing 2 hours of daily care in home support. So we need to be mindful about how we're spending money, where we're spending money, and whether we're able to create the best environments for those affected by Alzheimer's, which is having a proactive approach, because in that way we can reduce stress and uncertainty for families. And we can also enable them to be able to plan for the future, to access resources and to receive guidance sooner, which we know I'm hearing at the doors, that's a struggle for people. They feel lost in the system and they don't feel like they are being given the information about how to get to step 2, let alone if they even can make it to step 1 right now. So I believe our plan really fosters a strong support network. It will help families to navigate the challenges of caregiving more efficiently. So thank you very much for the question.
Shall I just hop in?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Well, first, I just want to say I feel like I'm a party of one here. So I appreciate so much being invited to this. I'm in a unique position here, I believe, because I can support the parties that have good planning and good policy. And that is my goal, is to be a positive voice there. I was just yesterday, Jennifer, at the Climb for Alzheimer's on the North Shore. Last week, I was at the North Shore Respite Center fundraiser. I've talked to a lot of people in community, and what I'm hearing is that we do need more investment in not just the long-term care beds, but in the home care, in the day programs. And also the ability to be able to transition someone from home care into long-term care. Families are sometimes having to cope longer than they could or should be able to with a loved one at home, because there isn't somewhere else for that loved one to go. So holding a government to account in terms of continued investment. The North Shore Respite Center is it's a grassroots group on the North Shore. City of North Vancouver contributed the land. They've got a nonprofit provider actually doing the development. Government has stepped in, but a very small contribution, and most of the funding for that very, very important respite center on the North Shore is coming from donors and fundraising. And so government needs to step in more and support those good projects that are happening.